Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Ghosts and Spirits video. I thought I would mix another one of these encounters videos here while I'm continuing to do some of your cryptids and monster suggestions. This is because I'm fresh off of that ghost hunt there in Gonzales, Texas, there at a location called the Brass Armadillo, a very haunted antique gift place. I really had a great time during that ghost hunt, did some live streams there as well. Thank you so much everyone for joining me for those live streams. If you haven't had a chance to check them out, they're posted there now online. You'll get to see some really nice ghost interactions that we had with some of the haunted patrons there. Not just some communications when it comes to lights and sensors, but we all heard variations of things from footsteps to talking to almost like whispers as well. It was overall a really great night. So in this case, this involves two ghost stories, both of them having some unique circumstances, both of them happening there at the website reddit.com. They are on the subreddit called Real Ghost Stories. So I'm going to talk about both of them, and then as usual, I'll give my own comments on them afterward. The first one is titled In the Shower Alone, and the other one is titled Child in the Bush. So let's go ahead and let's talk about the first one, In the Shower Alone, and it comes from a user called Hold That Thought. So here's essentially what they state. And so I live in an apartment that has an obvious ghost/spirit living here also. And while living here, I've had two roommates, and all three of us have witnessed the same exact thing from the specific spirit. When we were the only one home and would take a shower, it would sound like the front door would open like someone was coming home. And so we would get out of the shower expecting someone to be home. And every time this happened, we opened the bathroom door to find out that in fact no one came through the front door. I live alone currently and took a shower just this evening. The noise and the feeling this time was a little different. This was because in the evening, I pushed a 50-pound plus piece of furniture up against the door to prevent intruders. And so this specific evening, I heard a bang at the door, and while it sounded like there was a struggle to get in, and after hearing that noise, it sounded like a door halfway with a creaking noise. It didn't frighten me, and it actually hasn't really frightened anyone, just confused us because we know what we heard. Does anyone have any idea of why the spirit is doing this when someone is home alone and in the shower? I heard one time spirits were attracted to water, and is this true? And why not in the shower with a roommate home? Looking forward to your insight. Then that's it. That's everything that this user Hold That Thought stated on their experience. So how about that? Interesting stuff. First off, this happened in an apartment and it occurred with multiple roommates. So not just one witness, but several of them. But obviously the big twist is the fact that this ghostly intruder only did it when someone was in the shower. They could be anywhere else, let's say in the kitchen or in the living room or in the bedroom. Sounded like nothing ever happened. But the minute they were in the shower, that's when that front door, which presumably would have been locked, right? Locked with a key or locked with that turn lock. Otherwise, it would have been pushed open, and then this thing, whatever it was making its presence known. Interesting stuff. That's interesting to me because wouldn't a ghost just essentially walk through something, right? Like you always hear about stories about ghosts, how they disappear into rooms. When a person walks into them, they don't find anyone there. Or other times they go through walls and other type of places within the home itself. Here, though, something was physically trying to make its entrance. And then when that happened, it couldn't because of this 50-pound piece of furniture. That was very insightful of that user to try to debunk something, try to make sure that, hey, it's not just the wind or some other circumstance causing this door to open. Nope, that's when this thing apparently tried to come in at the very same time but was struggling because of that piece of furniture. I have no clue essentially why this spirit was doing what it does there. Maybe it was something where it did this back when it was alive. Who knows? But either way, though, I'm still mystified of this. When I first read it And I'm sure I'd love to hear what everyone's thoughts are as far as this circumstance and why it's occurring to this user. That's also something else that's interesting in apartments. You never know, right? When something is haunted at a location, makes you wonder how many people have died at certain apartments before you move into that location. And then when that happens, who knows if you'll have a visitor, another roommate of sorts, a tenant, if you will, without your approval. But then that story is good to go there. The next one is from a user called Chris Morris Fan, and then they titled theirs Child in the Bush. So here's essentially what they state. When I was 9 years old, I was playing hide and seek with my two cousins. I was just trying to find an area that was obscure and quite unknown to my cousins because I've been at the house and my grandmother and grandfather's house more than any other cousin there for weeks or months sometimes. Anyway, it was the countryside in the middle of nowhere in a field with only one motorway. And so I came across this child inside of a bush full of thorns and nettles, and it was in a ditch slightly. In fact, it was at the back of the shed and greenhouse area, and it was a boy. And so I talked to the boy in the bush, and he said stuff to me like, "Why are you here? And what are you doing?" I don't exactly remember all of it because I was only 9 back then, but I'll never forget the look of that boy. His face was pitch black, and if I ever tried to get a closer look, it didn't seem to show an eye or anything. I could only see the side of his nose and cheek. Anyway, I had a pretty normal conversation full of questions like, why are you in the bush and where do you live and come from? After about 2 minutes of being with this boy, who had only seen as part of, with part of his clothes, I told the boy, wait there, and then ran to my cousin called Thomas, who was only a couple of months younger than me. And so me and him walked back to the bush, and this boy was gone. And I still find it strange because it would have been hard to get in and out of a bush like that. Needless to say, I felt bewildered, and then I stopped playing hide and seek with Jamie and Thomas. And then I had a talk with them about what I just saw 5 minutes ago about that boy in the bush. My cousin then told me this. The one who was trying to find me said that when he saw me talking to myself for a while, and that just bewildered me even more. After that, it was dinner, and I told my family members about my experience outside, but of course, none of them ever believed me, not even my cousin eventually. But I never saw that boy again, and I don't think I ever will. In my teen years, I used to walk around in the cornfields in the pitch black darkness at 2 and 3 a.m. listening to music, but even then, I never saw him again. I'll always remember this event, and I don't believe in the word coincidence, so I believe everything explainable, including unexplainable or random things, happened for a reason. It was so real to me that all of it was 100% real. This is just one of the other experiences similar to this one, but this is my first one with these type of things, and that's why it also stands out to me. Thanks for reading. If you did, I very much appreciate it. Thanks again. And then that's it. That's everything that this user, Chris Morrison Fan, stated in their entry. So let's go ahead and let's talk about this one. So as you can see, this happened to this user back when they were much younger, 9 years old at the time. Interesting that he could even remember that. Obviously, it was a very memorable experience. But as a child, thinking about it and, remembering it all these years after, it's still stuck to him pretty clearly. I say that because on my end, it's very hard for me to remember anything back before I was even like a teen. I just don't recall much memories when I was a child or anywhere around that age. Let me know if some of you out there have that same type of experience. But here, he ran into this young boy. That boy was clearly in an area where you wouldn't expect to see a young child. It was in a bush full of thorns and nettles. If anyone was there and they were real, they would obviously be hurting. This type of stuff would be just poking and prodding them to no end. No matter how little they move, they would have naturally had something poking at them, probably even enough to cause them to bleed. But whatever this boy was doing there, it obviously wasn't impacting him at the same time. It was a little scary to read that his face was almost obscure, like it was like purposefully, I don't know, like blacked out, like it was some mist that was over him. The way the face was described, described it was almost like it was a shadow person, maybe even like a junior shadow person. I don't know. That was just the impression that I got when it came to this child that was there. No clue, no indication why they were there, why they were stuck within the bush. Obviously, when you hear stuff involving other stories about ghosts and spirits, usually there's a tragedy involved. So there may have been something where, who knows, maybe this child died within that field long past them, and they're just and he happened to die like right there in that spot. But for whatever reason, like over the passage of time, there was these thorns and nettles that just grew around that specific spot. And so that's why the boy was there. And then seeing that this other boy, the user, was coming about, it was almost like a kinship of sorts, and that would cause that person, the child ghost, to be able to interact with them afterward. I did like to hear that this user eventually came back within their teen years, purposely revisiting, it seems like, that specific area, that cornfield, to just make sure that, hey, maybe there was a chance they could see this child again, this child ghost, but unfortunately, they didn't. All of this reminded me, in fact, of that recent experience I had there at Fort Concho, there in the officers' quarters 1, the famous ghosts involving Edie, the young girl, the tragic young girl that ended up dying on the second floor within that area. She died because of an illness that just wasn't, at least in that time period, it wasn't something that could be cured. And so she still haunts that area too. And she also loves to come out whenever there's interactions with people there too. So it reminded me instantly with regards to this boy there in the middle of that bush, the fact that he could also come out whenever someone was just moseying about in that location. It reminded me of the two, and maybe there was also just tragedy associated with there. So that's pretty much it. That's all the info associated with these two stories. I'd love to hear what your thoughts are, what your comments are with regards to these encounters. If anyone has any more information associated, especially on the first one, involving ghostly encounters, anytime someone takes a shower, I'd love to hear what those comments are too. All right, everybody. Thanks again as always. Take care. Bye.